when a young black girl proudly said, "My dad works at NASA." The entire class burst into laughter, doubting her words. But then, the classroom door swung open, and a man in a NASA uniform stepped inside. The entire room fell silent. Esha Washington sat at the worn wooden desk, her small fingers tracing the creases of the crumpled permission slip. The NASA logo at the top gleamed under the classroom's fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the hesitant grip she had on the paper. Her hair beads clinked softly as she glanced up, her dark brown eyes scanning the room, searching for a moment of courage. "Hey, Esha," Jake snickered from 2 desks away. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed with the smug confidence of a boy who had never doubted his place in the world. "Your dad gonna sign that? What's he gonna put janitor as his job title?" His words, coated in mockery, sent ripples of laughter through the nearby students. Esha's stomach clenched. Heat prickled at the back of her neck. She swallowed hard, pressing the paper flat against her desk, as if smoothing it out could steady the shake in her hands. "My dad works there," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, mopping floors isn't exactly being a scientist," Tyler added, his grin wide as he high-fived Jake. Esha didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, her face blank. But inside, a storm churned. She wanted to tell them, wanted to shout the truth so loud it would shake the very walls of the classroom. But she knew better. Knew that words wouldn't change their minds. A sharp voice cut through the teasing. "That's enough, boys." Mrs. Green, their teacher, looked up from her desk, her gray-blue eyes peering over her glasses. She was a tall woman, neat and composed, with a sharp bob and a wardrobe of muted tones that matched the seriousness in her voice. "Get back to your work." The laughter died down, but the smirks lingered. Esha turned her focus back to the slip, her nails pressing crescent moons into the paper. She didn't need their approval. She just needed to get this signed. A sharp buzz on her wrist pulled her from her thoughts. She turned her wristwatch, NASA issued, a gift from her father. The screen blinked. 3 missed calls. Dad. Her chest tightened. She already knew what that meant. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the dimly lit kitchen as Esha leaned over the wooden table, her fingers tracing the arc of a sugar cookie. The kitchen clock blinked 12:04 a.m., but she was wide awake. Across from her, her father, tall, broad-shouldered, his NASA polo slightly wrinkled from a long day, placed a chocolate chip in the center of his cookie. "Now, imagine this is Mars," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "And this?" He held up another chocolate chip before pressing it into Esha's cookie. "That's Perseverance. And you, Pumpkin, your name is inside it. Right here, riding across the Martian surface." Esha's eyes widened. She tucked her knees to her chest, the oversized NASA hoodie she wore swallowing her small frame. "My name? On Mars?" Her father nodded. "When NASA launched Perseverance, they let people send their names on microchips. I put yours in." He tapped the cookie again. "So now, a little piece of you is out there, exploring. Just like you will one day." Esha grinned, biting into her cookie like she was conquering a planet herself. The way her dad looked at her, pride, warmth, certainty, made her believe it was true. But that had been 2 years ago. Now, gripping the permission slip, her dad's missed calls flashing in the dim classroom, that warmth felt further away than Mars itself. The hallway outside Mrs. Green's office smelled of floor polish and old books, the scent thick in the quiet air. Esha hesitated in the doorway, the permission slip damp in her hand. Her heart pounded as she watched Mrs. Green flip through a thick stack of papers, her glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Come in, Isha," the teacher said without looking up. Her voice was calm, measured, like she already knew what Isha was going to say. Isha stepped inside. the door clicking shut behind her. The room was neat, just like Mrs. Green herself. Books lined in perfect order, a globe perched on the edge of the desk, and a motivational poster that read, "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars." "You wanted to talk to me?" Mrs. Green finally looked up, pushing her glasses higher on her nose. Esha nodded, fingers tightening around the paper. "It's about the field trip. She hesitated. "I need my dad to sign this, but—" Mrs. Green leaned forward, her hands folding on the desk. "Esha, I know you're excited about NASA, and that's wonderful, but we need to be realistic. Not everyone can be an astronaut." Isha's jaw tightened. "I don't want to be an astronaut. I want to build the things they use." Mrs. Green smiled, but it was the kind adults gave when they didn't believe you. "That's great, but maybe we should focus on goals that are a little more practical." A lump formed in Esha's throat. She wanted to argue, to tell Mrs. Green that her dad was part of NASA, that she was smart enough, that she belonged there. But she'd heard this before. The doubt, the soft discouragement hidden behind polite smiles. Her wristwatch buzzed again, another missed call. Her dad was trying, always trying. But no matter what he did, no matter how many nights he spent working, people still saw him the same way. She straightened her shoulders, her fingers gripping the paper like it was the last thing keeping her grounded. "I just need him to sign it, that's all." Mrs. Green exhaled, glancing at the clock. "All right, Esha, leave it here. If he signs it, bring it back tomorrow." Esha swallowed her frustration and placed the slip on the desk. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of a book on the corner of the shelf, Hidden Figures. The spine was stiff, untouched, like it had been sitting there for years. She walked out without another word. Esha sat cross-legged on her bed, her laptop balanced on her knees. The glow of the screen reflected in her deep brown eyes, illuminating the determination tightening her features. The room was silent, except for the occasional creak of the house settling and the muffled sound of her dad's late-night TV show drifting from the living room. She typed quickly into the search bar, "Black, female NASA engineers." The first few results were about Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space. Then came articles about Katherine Johnson, the mathematician who helped send Apollo 11 to the moon. Esha clicked on a picture of Johnson, her fingers trembling slightly. "They never talked about her in school," she muttered under her breath. Her teeth pressed into her lower lip as she scrolled through the page, her heart pounding with each new fact. Mrs. Green was wrong. She wasn't chasing an impossible dream. She was following a path paved by women who had been overlooked, just like her. Esha switched tabs, her fingers flying across the keyboard. NASA internships, engineering scholarships, a program for young women in STEM. Each link she opened was another piece of proof. Proof that she wasn't crazy. Proof that she wasn't just a kid with big dreams and no chance of making them real. She reached for her notebook, flipping to a blank page. In bold letters, she wrote at the top, "I belong here." A knock at the door made her jump. She slammed the laptop shut, her pulse quickening. "Pumpkin?" Her dad's deep voice came through the wood. "Still awake?" Esha hesitated. "Yeah, just finishing some homework." A pause. Then the door creaked open, and her dad stepped inside. He was still in his work uniform, dark blue coveralls with a NASA patch sewn on the chest. The faint smell of industrial cleaner clung to him, but his face held the warmth that always made her feel safe. "You sure?" he asked, his gaze flickering to the closed laptop. "You've been real quiet tonight." Esha forced a small smile. "Just thinking about the field trip." Her dad's expression softened. He walked over, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I know, Pumpkin. I wanted to call you earlier, but things got busy." He ran a hand over his shaved head, exhaling. "Listen, I might have to miss Parents' Day. The Artemis launch, It's okay, Isha interrupted too quickly. Her chest tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. I get it. Work is important. Her dad studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes full of something unspoken. Then, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. Esha opened it carefully. It was a note, handwritten in his slightly messy scrawl. I see you, Esha, and I believe in you. Her fingers tightened around the paper. She looked up at him, blinking rapidly to keep her emotions in check. Thanks, Dad, she whispered. He nodded, pressing a kiss to the top of her head before standing. Get some sleep, all right? Big day tomorrow. Esha nodded, watching as he left, closing the door behind him. She unfolded the note again, running her thumb over the words. Her dad believed in her, and that was enough. For now. Esha stared at the note in her hands long after her dad had left. The words were simple, but they carried weight, settling deep in her chest. She traced each letter with her fingertip, committing them to memory before carefully tucking the paper into her notebook. Her wristwatch vibrated softly against her skin. A message notification. She picked up her phone, swiping to unlock it. Dad. I have something important to tell you. Call me when you wake up, her brows furrowed. Something about the message made her stomach twist. It wasn't like her dad to be vague. He was always direct, always clear. A glance at the clock told her it was past midnight, but sleep was the last thing on her mind. She hesitated only a second before tapping his contact and bringing the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice, then, Pumpkin. His voice was quieter than usual, almost cautious. Hey, she whispered. I just saw your message. What's up? A sigh crackled through the speaker. I didn't want to wake you, but there's something I need to say before you hear it from someone else. Esha sat up straighter, gripping the phone tighter. Dad, what's going on? Another pause. Then, the Artemis launch was delayed, he said slowly. They still need me at the site, but things have changed. Esha swallowed, trying to read between the lines. What kind of things? A rustling sound came through the line, like he was rubbing his hand over his face. They're making cuts. Budget stuff. A lot of people are losing their positions. Her stomach dropped. Are you? No, he said quickly. I'm okay, but some of my team isn't. Good engineers, Esha. People who worked their whole lives to be here. And now, he trailed off. Esha's throat tightened. She thought of the way Mrs. Green had dismissed her dreams, the way Jake had laughed at her in class. She thought of the history books that never mentioned Katherine Johnson, the articles buried under more popular stories. And now, people like her father were being pushed aside. That's not fair, she said, voice small but firm. No, her dad agreed. It's not, but that's the way it is. And I don't want that to scare you away from chasing this dream, okay? I don't ever want you to think it's not worth it. Esha bit her lip. But what if? No what ifs, he interrupted gently. You belong here, Esha. No matter what anyone says. No matter how hard it gets. Promise me you won't let this stop you. She hesitated, then nodded even though he couldn't see her. I promise. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the steady sound of their breathing. Finally, her dad exhaled. All right, get some sleep, Pumpkin. Tomorrow's a new day. Yeah, she murmured. Night, Dad. She ended the call and stared at the screen for a long time, her mind buzzing with everything he'd said. The world wasn't fair. But she had a choice, and she wasn't backing down. Esha walked into the classroom the next morning, gripping her notebook so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her mind was still clouded with thoughts of her dad's call, the unfairness of it all, the quiet pain in his voice. She had barely slept, but she forced herself to push forward. She had a promise to keep. As she took her seat, a low hum of laughter rippled through the room. She glanced up and felt her stomach twist. On the whiteboard, in thick black marker, someone had drawn a crude picture of an astronaut with a crossed-out helmet. Above it, the words "astronaut" were scrawled in jagged letters. A sharp snicker came from behind her. Esha didn't have to turn around to know who it was. "Nice spacesuit, Washington," Tyler jeered, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Did your janitor dad design it?" More laughter. Esha's ears burned, but she stayed frozen, staring at the board. She could hear her own pulse pounding in her head. Mrs. Green walked in, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She paused mid-step, her eyes locking onto the whiteboard. The laughter died down, but no one moved to erase it. "Who did this?" Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Silence. Tyler leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk still playing on his lips. Mrs. Green sighed and grabbed the eraser, wiping the board clean. The ugly black marker smeared before disappearing entirely, but the weight of it still hung heavy in the air. "Esha, are you all right?" Mrs. Green's gaze softened as she turned toward her. Isha swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. "I'm fine." She wasn't, but she wouldn't let them see that. Mrs. Green hesitated, then faced the class. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable. We support each other in this room. If anyone thinks otherwise, they can see me after class." No one spoke. Esha forced herself to look straight ahead, ignoring the way her fingers trembled against her notebook. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight back, but instead, she gritted her teeth and did what she always did. She endured. The next few days passed in a blur. Esha kept her head down, focusing on her work, trying to block out the whispers, the stares, the lingering smirks. She had endured worse, she told herself. This was just another storm she had to push through. But something was different. Mrs. Green had been watching her more closely. During class, the teacher's eyes would linger just a little longer when Esha answered a question. At lunch, she had spotted Mrs. Green at her desk, scrolling through something on her computer, her brows furrowed. Then, one afternoon, just as the final bell rang, Mrs. Green called her name. "Esha, can you stay for a moment?" A few curious glances were thrown her way as the rest of the class filtered out, but she ignored them. She took a slow breath and walked up to Mrs. Green's desk. The teacher hesitated before speaking. "I did some reading last night." She turned her computer screen toward Esha. "Did you know about Katherine Johnson?" Esha blinked at the screen. An article was open displaying a black and white photo of a woman in glasses, writing calculations by hand. The name hit Esha like a jolt. "Yeah," she said carefully. "She worked for NASA. She helped with the Apollo missions." Mrs. Green nodded. "She did. And yet, I don't remember learning about her when I was your age. Do you?" Esha shook her head. "That's what I thought." Mrs. Green leaned back, exhaling. "I realize now that I might have dismissed you too quickly, Isha. You spoke about NASA like it was in your blood, and I treated it like a fantasy. That wasn't fair to you." Esha's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She didn't know what she had expected from Mrs. Green, but an apology hadn't been one of them. "Your father," Mrs. Green continued. "He's an engineer, isn't he?" "Not just part of the janitorial staff." Esha's throat tightened. "Yeah." Mrs. Green gave a small, regretful smile. "That's what I thought, too. I looked him up. Washington, right? I read about his work with Artemis. He's brilliant." Pride and frustration swirled in Esha's chest. Why had it taken an internet search for Mrs. Green to believe in her? "Why are you telling me this?" Esha asked, her voice quiet. Mrs. Green sighed. "Because I don't want you to think I'm just another person who won't see you. I want to do better, and I want to help you, if you'll let me." Esha studied her. searching for insincerity, but found none. For the first time in a long time, someone had really looked at her. The shift had begun. The next morning, Esha walked into class feeling something different, something she hadn't expected. It wasn't confidence exactly, but the weight on her chest felt just a little lighter. Mrs. Green's words lingered in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, someone was finally starting to see her. She took her seat. But before she could even open her notebook, Mrs. Green clapped her hands together at the front of the room. "Class, I want to show you something today." Curious murmurs spread as she walked over to the smartboard and tapped at her laptop. A live feed flickered onto the screen, and suddenly, a familiar sight filled the room. Isha's breath caught. She knew that room. She had seen it in photos, in videos, in her dad's emails when he was working late. The class quieted as the feed zoomed in on a group of engineers hunched over their screens, monitoring something important. Data streamed across the monitors, and in the background, voices called out commands. Then, as if on cue, a notification popped up on the bottom of the screen. The room buzzed with excitement. Even Tyler, who usually had some snide remark, was sitting up straighter. "This is live?" Jake asked. Mrs. Green nodded. "This is happening right now. And if you look closely..." She paused and pointed at a figure standing near the control panel. "That's Esha's father." Gasps rippled through the classroom. Esha felt her face grow warm as every head turned toward her. "Wait, what?" Lila's eyes widened. "You mean he's actually..." "An engineer," Mrs. Green confirmed. "One of the key people working on the Artemis program. The very program that will take humans back to the moon." Silence fell over the room. For once, there was no laughter, no mocking, just the sound of the live feed humming through the speakers. Esha swallowed hard. She had spent so much time trying to prove herself, to make people believe her. But in the end, she didn't have to say a word. The proof was right there on the screen. The classroom was eerily quiet after the NASA feed ended. No one spoke. No one laughed. Instead, they just sat there, absorbing what they had just seen. The weight of truth had settled over them, and for the first time, Esha felt something shift in the air around her. She didn't know what to do with it. She kept her head down, packing up her things as the bell rang. Just as she was about to leave, she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Jake. He stood there awkwardly, holding something in his hand. A small, carefully built Saturn V model. It was made of white plastic, its tiny details precise and delicate. He scratched the back of his neck. "I made this for you." Esha blinked. "What?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know your dad was actually, I guess I should have believed you." Esha hesitated, looking down at the model. She wasn't sure what to say. For so long, she had been fighting to be heard, to be seen. Now, for the first time, someone was trying to make it right. She took the model carefully, running her fingers over the smooth plastic. "Thanks," she said softly. Jake nodded quickly, stuffing his hands in his pockets before turning away. That wasn't the only surprise. The next morning, Lila, who had always stayed quiet when others teased Esha, slid into the seat next to her. "Hey," she said, almost shyly. "So, I did a report on Mae Jemison last night. You were right. She's incredible." Esha glanced at her, eyebrows raised. "You did?" Lila nodded. "Yeah. I never really thought about it before, but I guess we don't really learn about people like her. Or like your dad." Something warm spread through Esha's chest. For the first time, people weren't just seeing her. They were listening, and that, she realized, was the real victory. The sky was a deep shade of orange as the class gathered outside, a crisp, autumn wind rolling through the schoolyard. Mrs. Green had arranged for a special event, one that made Esha's heart race with anticipation. A small, makeshift launch pad sat in the middle of the field. At its center stood a bottle rocket, carefully crafted from recycled plastic and aluminum foil. But today, it wasn't just a school project. It was something more. "All right, class," Mrs. Green announced, her voice carrying over the murmurs. "We've spent the past week learning about space exploration. Now, it's time to launch our own mission." Esha felt the weight of every gaze on her. This was her moment. She stepped forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the pressure pump. The countdown was set, the launch tube secured. A hush fell over the class as the seconds ticked down. 3. Esha glanced over at Jake and Lila. They both nodded at her, encouragement written across their faces. 2. She could feel her father's presence, even though he wasn't there. The same way he had guided her through every step, every doubt, every dream. 1. She pressed the trigger. With a powerful hiss, the rocket shot into the air, spiraling higher and higher, until it was nothing more than a speck against the vast sky. A burst of cheers erupted around her, but Esha didn't hear them. She was watching the sky, eyes wide, heart soaring. Somewhere, miles away, the Artemis team was preparing for their real launch. And one day, she would be part of it. The bottle rocket reached its peak and began its descent. But Esha knew, deep down, that her journey was only just beginning. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comment section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification.